And believe it or not, the New World has been secretly influenced by his example. John Dee is considered the original wizard. He was the inspiration for the character of Prospero in Shakespeare's The Tempest, and for Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus. In the modern world, Dee was the role model for J.K. Rowling's Albus Dumbledore in the Harry Potter books, the character of Gandalf in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, and even Ian Fleming's James Bond. Few people know that John Dee was the original Agent 007 in Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Ian Fleming got the idea for his designation 007 for James Bond from the fact that that was how John Dee would sign his correspondence when he was overseas working as a spy for Queen Elizabeth. He would always sign his name 007. And that's where the concept came in for James Bond. Because James Bond was originally intended to be kind of a modern day Dr. John Dee, although it never really developed that way.
While Dee's character continues to intrigue, some would argue that compelling the imaginations of literary minds was not his greatest influence. This image shows what appears to be a wizened old man passing a lamp in the dead of night to a younger man in Elizabethan clothing. Baconians believe this old world engraving represents Dr. John Dee passing the lamp of esoteric knowledge and wisdom to his successor, Francis Bacon. Both Bacon and Dee were men of science, dedicated to the advancement of learning. Both men were members of the Rosicrucian Society, of which Bacon would become the chief. Like Bacon, John Dee believed that America was indeed the lost continent of Atlantis. But where did he get this idea? Was it given to him by his angels? And did he pass this concept on to Francis Bacon? We can only speculate. But when Queen Elizabeth took the throne, the dream of colonizing this new Atlantis would come closer to being a reality.
When Bloody Mary, as she was called, this was Mary Tudor, who had been now on the throne and persecuting the Christians, and she died, perhaps ironically, with a false pregnancy. And so when she died in 1558, then after that, Elizabeth I came in as queen. And so there were questions of what day should be chosen for Elizabeth's coronation.
The coronation of a new ruler was an important event, the timing of which, it was believed, could determine the success or failure of a monarch's reign. To ensure her good fortune, Elizabeth called upon her old friend, Dr. John Dee.
He was the Queen's astrologer too. He computed the date for her to be crowned.
Astrology in those days didn't mean necessarily what we understand it to mean today. There were some odd things about it, but there was a study of the stars, that we would call today astronomy. So they had to know about the movements of the stars and the planets, and they were pretty knowledgeable about that. So it was a strange mixture of astrology and astronomy. So that's what he was doing.
It's debatable how the efforts of Dee's astrology impacted the course of England. But when the new queen took the throne, it marked the beginning of an unprecedented era in English history. During this time, the language of the New World would be transformed, ancient knowledge would unfold, and the course of the philosophic empire would be established. The modern world would be changed forever, largely because of Queen Elizabeth I.
And she was bright. This was Queen Elizabeth of England, one of the brightest queens that England has ever had. Whether she was a true Christian or not was perhaps doubtful, but at least she did support the Protestant cause and not the Catholic one.
The Queen's Protestant faith made her immediate enemies in Rome. In April of 1570, Pope Pius V issued a papal bull excommunicating her from, quote, the unity of the body of Christ.
Well, that meant that the Pope was saying to all the Catholic kings of Europe, go and invade England, kill the Queen, take over the country, and make it Catholic, and I'll give you my blessing. So that was a huge threat to England and the Queen. So the English, who didn't like that, didn't like that idea, they formed a close-knit protection around the Queen and their country.
To answer the threat of spies and assassins from Rome, the English set up an intelligence network under the leadership of Sir Francis Walsingham, known as the Queen's Spy Master. Among his secret agents were Dr. John Dee and later on Sir Francis Bacon, along with their Rosicrucian Society, which is said to have been formed in England for the purpose of protecting Elizabeth. But some suspect the Order of the Rose and Cross had yet another agenda.
I think they would have definitely been on the Protestant side of things. They would have had a vested interest in using all of their both political savvy and occult savvy to protect the Queen, but I also think they had an esoteric agenda as well.
This society had a very esoteric base. Behind it had links with the wisdom societies, the wisdom traditions throughout Europe, and inherited a lot of that wisdom light being passed on. And so they had an inner program which was to try to raise consciousness of society.
According to Bacon, Rosicrucianism seemed to represent the very heart and focus of the entire New Atlantis concept.
Francis Bacon's last book that he was writing at the time when he allegedly died, that was 1626, but his last book was called The New Atlantis, and the subtitle was The Land of the Rosicrucians.
Why the land of the Rosicrucians, or Rosicrucians? Why did Bacon deem their influence to be so important?
Rosicrucianism gets its name from the symbols, the main symbols used, and that's the rose and the cross. But these are very ancient symbols. They go back long way in time, and been used by different societies for thousands of years.
In the hands of different societies, the symbol has been interpreted in a variety of ways. There is the decipherment of the rose that received much attention in Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code.
The rose is a symbol of secrecy, and the term in Latin that characterized the relationship of the rose to secrecy was sub rosa, meaning under the rose. So secret orders world round, when they swear to secrecy, swear sub rosa.
The secrecy of the rose represents the hidden knowledge of the ancient mystery religion, while the cross symbolizes Christianity. The combining of these two is what defines the belief of nearly all the secret orders.
The symbology there is the infusion of all this Eastern Persian spirituality into Christianity.
Was this fusion of beliefs a part of Bacon's plan? And what sort of impact could it have? The Reformers argued that the mixture of paganism and Christianity is what produced the Dark Ages. Would Bacon's program of the Rose and Cross be a blessing or a curse? And how would this whole thing be carried out?
When one follows the Rosicrucian trail, John Dee was a very, very key influence in the historical Rosicrucians, and some say even the founder of it, the first president of it. But at some point, the presidency was given over to Francis Bacon, and he was in charge of the Rosicrucians, not just in England, but it spread right through Europe, and was following Bacon's particular program. And outwardly Bacon called his program the advancement of proficience of learning.
This advancement of learning represented Bacon's desire to transform the world through knowledge. But he recognized